Black CEO removed from first-class seat for white passenger 10 minutes later, he bought the airline. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. 2. A is always my seat. The words exploded through the cabin like shrapnel made of arrogance. Every conversation in first class stopped mid-sentence. Champagne flutes froze mid-air. The hum of the engines seemed to hush, as if even the plane wanted to listen. Row 2, window seat. A black man sat there, calm, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like quiet authority. Across from him, a white businessman flushed. Furious was leaning forward, fingers stabbing the air. I fly this route every Monday, the man barked. This is my seat. The attendant hesitated, eyes darting between them. Sir, both of your tickets say 2A. We're trying to... I don't care what his ticket says, the man snapped. People like him always find a way to sneak into places they don't belong. The sentence sliced the air open. Phones lifted, screens glowed. Passengers leaned sideways, hungry for a scene. The black man, Malik Johnson, didn't move. He looked up slowly, the cabin lights reflecting in his calm eyes. I believe, he said softly, it's printed on my boarding pass. The other man laughed, sharp and joyless. Don't get smart with me. This seat costs more than your rent. Laughter bubbled from somewhere behind them, nervous, guilty, eager. The flight attendant's smile stiffened. She whispered something into her earpiece. Moments later, 2 airport security officers appeared at the aisle, uniforms crisp, expressions already decided. Sir, we're going to need you to step out for verification, one said, looking directly at Malik. But, please, sir. Let's not make a scene, a murmur rolled through the cabin. Someone whispered, of course they picked him. Another voice added, why doesn't he just move? Malik's gaze traveled across the row of faces, expensive watches, polite masks, the quiet satisfaction of people sure they're on the right side of power. He exhaled slowly, adjusted his tie, and rose. The man in the next row smirked, already lowering himself triumphantly into the seat still warm from another man's dignity. As Malik stood in the narrow aisle, the engines hummed again, filling the silence with mechanical indifference. He handed his boarding pass to the officer without a word. The attendant stammered, Sir, we're truly sorry for the inconvenience. The gentleman is a long-time Diamond member? Malik's voice was calm, almost kind. I'm sure he is. He turned slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch his profile, the poise of a man unshaken. Around him, the glow of phone screens turned the aisle into a corridor of judgment. Behind him, the white passenger reclined smugly, tugging at his tie. That's better, he muttered. Not today. This is mine, the officer gestured toward the door. Right this way, sir. Malik gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. The click of his shoes against the floor sounded louder than the engines. At the threshold, he paused. Every camera lens in the cabin caught the same moment, the calm before the storm. He looked back, voice low but clear enough for every microphone to catch. Gentlemen, he said, you're making a very expensive mistake. And then he walked out, leaving behind the hum of whispers, the scent of tension, and a cabin full of people who had no idea what that sentence truly meant. As Malik stepped into the aisle, the cabin's temperature seemed to drop a degree. Even the air knew what injustice felt like. The officers led him toward the front, their movements polite but firm, the kind of courtesy that hides condescension. Cameras followed. The whisper of phone notifications filled the silence like insects humming after a storm. The man who had shouted to A is always my seat was already stretching out, satisfied. He adjusted his cufflinks, reclined, and ordered champagne before the plane had even pushed back. Some people just don't understand how these things work, he muttered to no one, but loud enough for everyone. A few passengers smiled weakly, unsure which side of history they were sitting on. At the boarding door, Malik stopped. He glanced at the flight attendant who had avoided his eyes since the moment the argument began. She looked 20-something, Her name tag read Kara, and guilt was written in the curve of her shoulders. "Sir, I am so sorry," she whispered. "Has a diamond elite, they told me." He raised a hand gently. "Don't apologize for someone else's turbulence." The sentence hung there, calm, unshakable. It wasn't anger. It was gravity finding a voice. Kara blinked, unsure why her chest suddenly felt tight. Malik walked down the jet bridge, the fluorescent lights painting his reflection across the metal walls. Behind him, the door sealed with a heavy thud, the sound of arrogance locking itself inside. In the waiting area, passengers stared at him like he carried a story they weren't ready to hear. A boy in a hoodie whispered to his mother, "Did he do something wrong?" The woman hesitated, then answered softly, "No. He just didn't do what they expected." Malik sat near the window, hands clasped loosely. The city lights beyond the tarmac flickered like restless thoughts. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his phone buzzed. Rachel, executive assistant. "Sir, are you all right? The video's already online." He opened the clip. The frame showed his calm face contrasted with the other man's fury, a moving picture of restraint against rage. The caption read, "Black man kicked out of first-class seat for white passenger." The view count was rising in real time. Thousands, tens of thousands. Comments split like lightning, some outraged, some indifferent, some defending policy. Malik scrolled once, then locked the screen. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small black notebook. A single line was written on the open page. "Integrity is the highest altitude." He closed it, exhaled. His expression didn't harden. It settled. There's a difference. Hardening is defense. Settling is decision. The airport intercom crackled overhead. "Final boarding call for Flight 701 to New York." Malik smiled faintly. That was his flight. The same airline, the same company scheduled to finalize a $4.2 billion merger with Aerovale Holdings, his company, within the next hour. He rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the executive lounge instead of the gate. The officers who had escorted him earlier were nowhere in sight. Only the echo of his shoes remained, sharp and deliberate. Inside the lounge, a wall of glass overlooked the runway. Jets rolled past, engines glowing like molten halos in the night. Malik lifted his phone again, but this time he didn't open the video. He opened his messages. 2. Rachel, pull everything. Effective immediately. He hit send. No exclamation mark, no anger, just clarity. The city unfolded beneath the glass like circuitry runways glowing, planes weaving light across the dark. Malik stood before that window, posture still, the reflection of a man who could rewrite the air itself. On the table behind him, his phone vibrated. Rachel again. "Rachel. Sir, are you sure?" Pulling the deal means walking away from the acquisition entirely. Malik. "Rachel, it was never just a deal. It was a test, and they failed it before takeoff." He ended the call. No hesitation. To the world, Malik Johnson was a mystery that boardrooms whispered about, but few had ever met in person. He rarely appeared in interviews, never attended galas, and hadn't been photographed in a decade. They called him the ghost of the sky, the man who built an empire from clouds. 25 years earlier, had been a mechanic's apprentice at a small regional airport outside Atlanta. Every night, he scrubbed grease from turbine blades, memorizing the designs of engines he couldn't afford to fly on. His first business was born in a rented storage unit, repurposing old aircraft parts into sustainable prototypes. He named it Aerovale, a word that meant Valley of Air. Now, that same company held controlling stakes in aerospace logistics, green aviation tech, and half the hangars along the eastern seaboard. Market valuation, $68.4 billion. Employees, 220,000. Malik owned every share. Yet, Head built all of it under one rule: never forget what the ground taught you. He remembered that ground clearly. The cracked concrete outside his grandmother's house, the smell of oil and rain after a long shift, her voice reminding him that humility and power were not enemies. She used to say, "They'll mistake silence for weakness, baby. Let them. Silence keeps your aim steady." That silence had just cost an airline $4.2 billion, though they didn't know it yet. He looked at the tarmac again. The plane that had removed him, Flight 701 was taxiing, its engines trembling in the distance. Somewhere inside, the man in seat 2A was sipping champagne, unaware that his victory was evaporating midair. Malik's reflection stared back at him from the window. Same calm face, same steady eyes. But behind that calm lived memory. He remembered the first time he was told, "You don't belong here." It was his first investor meeting. Head been mistaken for catering staff. Head smiled then, too. And just like tonight, Head let silence do the heavy lifting. The lounge attendant approached nervously. "Mr. Johnson, can I get you anything? Coffee? Something stronger?" He shook his head. "No, thank you. But tell your manager he'll be using the private conference suite." She blinked, surprised. That suite was usually reserved for heads of state and airline CEOs. Malik simply walked past, scanned his ID, and the door opened automatically. Her monitor flashed. Access granted, Aerovale Priority Level 1. Inside, the room glowed with soft amber light, walls lined with digital displays tracking live markets. He tapped one screen. The airline's stock ticker hovered in red. Down 4%, slipping fast. The public hadn't even heard his side yet. They didn't need to. The video was speaking for him. He watched the numbers fall for a moment, then whispered, "Altitude adjusts itself." His assistant's reply came seconds later. "All acquisition files retracted. Legal has confirmed withdrawal. Media outlets are calling." He typed back, "We don't comment. Let silence work." From his vantage point, Malik could see the plane lift into the night, a silver blade against the clouds. He didn't look away. Every injustice, he thought, carries its own countdown. Some explode loudly. Others descend quietly, like pressure before a storm. The storm had already begun. The private suite was silent except for the low hum of servers syncing live data. Malik stood before the wall-sized display as red graphs bled downward across the airline's stock chart. Numbers never lied. They simply translated power. He adjusted his cufflinks, silver against the warm amber light, and spoke into his earpiece. "Rachel," he said calmly, "activate full withdrawal. Notify legal, treasury, and PR. No statements yet." Her voice came crisp through the line. "Understood, sir. Do we initiate the hold on Skylux accounts?" He looked at the ticker flicker again, SKLX. Down 6%. "Yes," he said. "Cancel everything. 2 words. Quiet. Precise. The kind of order that makes entire ecosystems shift." Within minutes, the command rippled through encrypted channels. Inside Aerovale's Manhattan headquarters, a night team of analysts froze mid-keystroke as alerts flared across their screens. Dozens of transactions halted simultaneously. Mergers, fleet leases, software transfers. One message carried his signature and nothing else. Effective immediately. Malik walked to the corner of the suite, where a coffee machine hummed softly. He poured a cup but didn't drink it, just watched the swirl of steam rise and disappear. "That's how arrogance works," he murmured. "It vanishes fast when it meets altitude." His phone buzzed again. "Rachel. Rachel. The airline's CFO is calling. They want to confirm the rumor before it hits the media." Malik. "Rumor?" "Rachel. The video's trending. Number seat 2A has 4 million views in 30 minutes. He smiled faintly. Then they already know. Outside the glass, the runway lights blinked like slow Morse code. A second plane lifted off, not the one that humiliated him, but another in the same livery, same arrogance, different metal. Malik raised his phone and took a photo of the sky. "Documentation?" he whispered. "For the archives." Meanwhile, inside the airline's headquarters 5 states away, chaos had begun. The boardroom filled with unanswered calls, legal teams scrambling for explanations. One junior analyst shouted, "Sir, Aerovale just pulled out of the acquisition. $4.2 billion gone." The CFO paled. "That's impossible. We were finalizing signatures tomorrow." The CEO slammed his fist on the table. "Get them back on the line." But Aerovale wasn't answering. Back in the suite, Malik received a single message from his legal counsel. All obligations terminated. Skylux breached representation ethics. "We're clean." He exhaled slowly, leaned against the window. The glass vibrated faintly from a departing jet. Through the reflection, he could see his own eyes calm, unbothered, lethal in their serenity. He picked up his notebook again, the one with a single line inside. This time, he wrote under it, "Dignity is expensive. Let them calculate the price." His phone lit up once more, not Rachel this time, but a number marked Private Media Line. He ignored it. Silence was still his best spokesperson. Instead, he walked toward the elevator leading to the tarmac. The security guard at the door straightened when he saw the ID tag clipped to Malik's pocket. Aerovale Executive Clearance. The guard stepped aside instantly. "Evening, Mr. Johnson." Malik nodded. "Evening. Don't. Stay out here too long, the storm's coming." The guard looked up at the clear night sky, confused. "Storm, sir?" Malik's smile was small. "You'll see it tomorrow. It won't come from the clouds." The elevator doors closed. In the distance, Flight 701 was mid-air, cruising at 30,000 feet. Inside, the man who'd claimed his seat laughed over champagne, blissfully unaware that by the time he landed, the world under him would have changed ownership. And in that quiet suite miles below, the man head humiliated had already rewritten the sky. By dawn, silence had become news. The overnight markets woke up to turbulence, but not the kind that rattles planes, the kind that shakes empires. Skylux Airlines opened at 9 a.m. Sharp, and by 9:03, its stock was already spiraling. Red tickers glowed across every major business channel. SKLX down 18% in early trading. Merger with Aerovale Holdings canceled. Reporters scrambled for statements. Executives hid behind scripted lines. "We're reviewing the situation," they said, but no one believed them. Across Manhattan, in the glass tower of Aerovale Holdings, the day began in perfect composure. Assistants whispered updates through wireless headsets. Analysts watched numbers fall with quiet satisfaction. And in the center office, Malik Johnson sat before a wall of screens, not gloating, not smiling, just observing the mathematics of arrogance meeting accountability. On one screen, a clip replayed on loop, Malik standing calmly as security escorted him away. The viral title read, "Black CEO removed from first-class seat for white passenger, then he bought the airline." 40 million views, 4 million comments. Number seat 2A was no longer just a hashtag, it was a movement. Malik turned to Rachel, who stood by the glass table, tablet in hand. "Damage assessment? Skylux lost over 700 million in market value since pre-market," she said. "Their PR team's panicking. They've called 3 times asking for a public clarification." "Clarification?" he echoed. "Truth doesn't need one." Rachel hesitated. "And the passenger? The one from 2A? Malik's expression barely shifted. He'll get his statement when he checks the morning news. Outside, cameras had begun gathering in front of Skylux headquarters, a sea of microphones, reporters, and angry employees who'd just learned their company bonuses had been frozen indefinitely. Inside those glass walls, panic spread faster than rumor. The CFO slammed his phone down. "Who is this Malik Johnson?" The intern stammered, reading from a tablet. "Founder and CEO of Aerovale Holdings. Aerospace, tech, logistics. Net worth, 68 billion. Private. No public statements in 7 years." The room fell silent. The CEO whispered, almost to himself. "We just kicked our own buyer off his seat." Back at Aerovale, Malik's phone buzzed again, not from investors, but from strangers. Messages flooded in. "I watched what they did to you, sir. Thank you for staying calm. My father was pulled from a flight once, too. He never got justice. But you made us proud. Number seat 2. A dignity flies first." He read a few, then placed the phone face down. This wasn't about revenge. It was about correction. The world had mistaken his restraint for surrender. It always did. Rachel approached, voice low. "Press wants to know if we'll issue a statement or apology request." He shook his head. "No apology required. We act, not announce." He stood, walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, and watched as a Skylux jet cut through the clouds outside his building, one of theirs, still branded in their name, not knowing it was flying on borrowed dignity. "Make sure the contracts for our new carrier are ready," he said. Aerovale Air moves up its launch to this quarter. Rebrand, repaint, retrain everything. Rachel blinked. That soon? He turned, eyes steady. They removed me from their seat. It's time we build our own cabin. In the newsroom below, the headlines kept mutating, each more poetic than the last. A silence worth $4.2 billion. The calmest revenge in corporate history. And while the world debated morality and market ethics, Malik Johnson simply straightened his jacket, the calm storm he had always been. He didn't need to shout to change the weather. He just adjusted the altitude. By noon, Skylux Airlines was in freefall financially, morally, and publicly. The elegant blue logo that once symbolized prestige now flashed across every major network beside the same humiliating headline. Passenger removed from flight was the airline's billion-dollar buyer. In the video loop, you could see the arrogance in real time, the pointing finger, the insult, the smug laugh, then the quiet face that said nothing, because it didn't have to. The world replayed that still frame like a sermon. At Skylux headquarters, chaos reigned. Executives shouted into phones, PR managers drafted frantic statements, and assistants printed crisis reports as fast as the ink could dry. The CEO, Charles Greer, stood at the head of the table, pale and trembling. "Get him on the phone," he barked. "Apologize. Offer reinstatement. Offer anything." The PR director hesitated. "Sir, he's not taking calls." Aerovale's gone completely silent. "Then we speak first," Greer snapped. "We have to control the narrative before it's too late." But it already was. Within minutes, every major outlet aired a montage. Malik being escorted out, the white passenger smirking, the security officer's hand on his shoulder. A journalist's voiceover cut through the footage. In a striking act of irony, the man removed from his seat was Malik Johnson, CEO of Aerovale Holdings, the same company negotiating a $4.2 billion acquisition of Skylux Airlines. The clip went viral instantly. News anchors called it the quietest corporate implosion in aviation history. Across the country, travelers began posting screenshots of their canceled Skylux bookings. Influencers tweeted, "If you believe in dignity, don't fly arrogance." The stock dropped another 12% by mid-afternoon. And the man who had shouted 2A, "Is always my seat," identified as Richard Hale, a long-time corporate client, was now trending under a new tag, "Number who is 2A." His employer released a single-line statement. "Mr. Hale has been placed on indefinite leave." By sunset, he was hiding from cameras outside his gated suburban home, his privilege now a headline without protection. Meanwhile, in a quiet office above Manhattan's skyline, Malik watched the news in silence. Rachel entered, tablet in hand, her tone careful. "They're asking for a meeting. The board wants to issue a joint apology." He didn't look up. Apologies are currency for those who can't afford responsibility. Rachel hesitated. "Public opinion's on your side, sir. Everyone's calling you." He cut in gently. "Don't say hero. I'm not their mirror. I'm their reminder." Outside the window, the city lights flickered like a constellation of choices, every one of them shaped by power, perception, and silence. Malik turned off the TV, muting the chaos mid-sentence. "I told them last night," he said quietly. "They made an expensive mistake. Now they understand the interest rate." Rachel studied him for a moment. "Will you take the call eventually?" "When accountability learns to dial my number," he replied. That night, Skylux issued an official statement. "We deeply regret the misunderstanding that occurred aboard Flight 701. We are committed to diversity, equality, and inclusion." It was everything corporate America had perfected: eloquent, empty, and 2 days too late. Social media wasn't forgiving. One user wrote, "Diversity isn't a statement, it's who you remove first." Another posted a split photo, Richard Hale reclining in 2A. Malik walking away in silence. Caption: "Every empire ends with the wrong man standing." By midnight, Skylux had lost nearly $2 billion in value. Malik didn't celebrate. He simply closed his notebook, placed it back inside his briefcase, and said, "Gravity's fair when you let it do its job." By the end of the week, Skylux had become a cautionary tale, a corporate ghost written in red ink. The markets had stopped free-falling only because there was nothing left to fall. Their apology tour failed before it began. What remained wasn't outrage. It was silence, the kind that follows a lesson everyone finally understands. Malik sat alone in his penthouse office, 20 floors above the city's pulse. Morning sunlight fractured across the glass like liquid gold, casting sharp patterns over the polished floor. On his desk, a single folder waited. Inside it, final documentation for the canceled $4 2B acquisition. The ink on Skylux's signatures looked desperate now, like a plea written too late. Rachel entered quietly. "All the reversals have cleared," she said. "Funds are fully restored to our account. What do you want to do with it?" Malik leaned back, eyes half closed. "Not with it," he corrected. "For it." She tilted her head. "For it?" He turned his chair toward the window. "For the lesson. For the people who still think dignity is an upgrade." A soft silence settled. Then he spoke again. "Transfer $4.2 billion to the Wings of Grace Foundation, effective today." Rachel froze. "All of it? All of it?" Her voice faltered. "That's a fortune." "It was a fortune," Malik said. "Now it's fuel." Within hours, legal teams began the process. A press release went out not from Skylux, not from Arrowvale, but from the newly revived foundation. Wings of Grace, a global aviation scholarship and equity fund providing education, pilot training, and STEM opportunities for underrepresented communities worldwide. The world didn't expect that twist. They'd waited for revenge, but got redemption instead. The same headlines that had once chronicled humiliation now carried a different tone. The CEO who bought dignity and gave it back to the world. $4.2 billion redirected to create equal skies. Commentators debated motives. Cynics called it a PR stunt. But those who knew Malik's history understood better. This was legacy, not theater. His grandmother's voice echoed through him again. "Baby, when they close a door, build a runway." By evening, journalists gathered outside Arrowvale headquarters, hoping for a statement. Malik stepped out briefly, calm in a dark suit that caught the light like a mirror. No bodyguards, no teleprompter, just a single line for the cameras. "I didn't lose a deal," he said. "I redirected altitude." Then he turned and left, refusing every follow-up question. The clip went viral within hours, not because of volume, but because of stillness. In the following days, flight academies across the country began receiving unexpected grants. Scholarships appeared in inboxes signed simply, "Wings of Grace." A small-town mechanic's daughter in Georgia cried when she opened hers. The note read, "Your dream deserves a seat." Signed, M.J. Even inside Skylux, change began to stir. Employees demanded a leadership overhaul. The old board resigned one by one, replaced by a diverse new council. The irony was perfect. Malik had never needed to fire them, had only needed to hold up a mirror. That night, Rachel joined him on the rooftop helipad of the Arrowvale Tower. The city glittered below, endless and indifferent. "You know," she said, "most people would have spent that money proving a point." Malik smiled faintly. "I did." He pointed toward the horizon where planes traced silver lines against the twilight. "That's the point." For a long moment, neither spoke. Wind brushed their faces. Somewhere above them, another jet roared past, engines singing like penance. And in that sound, Malik heard something deeper, not vengeance, not victory, but balance. By Monday morning, the story had become folklore, not just corporate news, but a parable told across screens, classrooms, and boardrooms. Number seat, 2A, was no longer a tag. It was a metaphor. The photo of Malik walking away from the airplane door, calm and unshaken, had become a global emblem printed on posters, turned into murals, captioned with one word, dignity. Airports began to feel different. People noticed who was being spoken over, who was being ignored, who was being treated as invisible. The ripple of one man's silence was changing behavior faster than a decade of policy ever could. Across social media, reactions collided like weather fronts. On one side, admiration, solidarity, awe. On the other, defensiveness, disbelief, the fragile noise of those uncomfortable with accountability. but the loudest voices were those of ordinary travelers, flight attendants, and ground crew people who had seen bias at 30,000 feet but never had a language for it. One tweet read, "He didn't yell, he didn't curse, he didn't even raise his voice. He raised the standard." Another, "When the calm man warns you, listen. Storms can wear suits." Within 48 hours, Wings of Grace Foundation had received over 600,000 small donations, not from billionaires, but from teachers, engineers, single parents, students. The tagline written across the website's banner, "Because dignity deserves altitude." Even airline workers began joining the wave. A flight attendant from Denver posted a video of herself folding uniforms into a donation box. Her caption, "He looked at me and said, 'Don't apologize for their turbulence.'" That one sentence changed how I walked down every aisle. The clip gained 10 million views overnight. News programs replayed the arc of the story as if it were cinema: the humiliation, the calm, the collapse, the rebuilding. Anchors called it a masterclass in power without noise. Malik still hadn't given an interview. His silence was the headline itself. But not everyone stayed quiet. One viral podcast, Corporate Shadows, dedicated an entire episode titled "The Price of 2A." The host began, "It's easy to call this poetic justice." But what Malik Johnson did wasn't revenge. It was infrastructure rebuilding dignity into the system itself. In the episode's second half, they played an unseen clip. Security footage leaked from the gate that night. It showed Malik standing still, surrounded by officers, before stepping out of frame. No anger, no protest, just composure. The host paused the video and said softly, "That's what power looks like when it doesn't need to shout." By then, even Skylux's competitors began capitalizing on the fallout. Ads appeared online with slogans like, "Respect flies first," and "No passenger left behind." The industry was quietly rewriting its image, orbiting around the man they had once removed. Rachel watched the frenzy unfold from her office, half amused, half amazed. She entered Malik's workspace holding a tablet filled with headlines. "They're calling you the architect of accountability," she said. Malik chuckled quietly. "They always build statues after they burn bridges." She smiled. "You know, the foundation raised nearly $900 million this week. People are asking when you'll speak publicly." He turned from the window, eyes steady. When the noise fades enough to hear meaning, he walked to his desk, where a pile of letters waited real paper, handwritten, delivered by mail. He opened one. It was from a high school student in Detroit. "My dad worked 3 jobs so I could go to flight school. He saw your video. He told me to finish what you started." Malik read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his notebook, right under the line that said, "Integrity is the highest altitude." Outside, the world kept spinning faster now, louder. Commentators argued about race, class, privilege, business ethics. But beneath all the noise, one truth had settled. Quiet power could be louder than chaos. By midweek, a new phrase had entered the cultural bloodstream. It wasn't a quote from a press release or a pundit. It was a line from a TikTok video filmed by a young pilot in training standing on a runway at dawn. She said, "Every time a plane takes off, I'll remember him, the man who showed the world that some seats can't be stolen, they can only be earned." The comment section filled with a single emoji. Even late-night shows picked up the story. A comedian joked, "Imagine getting kicked out of your own airline. That's like firing your boss before realizing he owns the building." The crowd laughed, but the message lingered. And somewhere above the noise, in a quiet office where the skyline met the clouds, Malik watched none of it. His phone was off, his TV dark. He sat by the window, sipping black coffee, eyes tracing the contrails stretching across the horizon. The world was learning something he'd known all along. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just flies higher. A year later, the world had moved on, or thought it had. Yet in airports across continents, one small emblem kept appearing, a white feather stamped beside the words, "Wings of Grace." It was more than a logo now. It was a quiet reminder that altitude begins inside. At sunrise, a new aircraft waited on the runway's silver body, soft gold trim, the insignia Aeroval Air glinting against the morning light. Cameras flashed as its inaugural flight prepared for takeoff. Crew members stood in crisp uniforms, each one hand-picked from the first scholarship class Malik had funded. The press leaned forward when he stepped onto the tarmac. No entourage, no spectacle. Just the same calm presence that had once filled a cabin with silence. A reporter called out, "Mr. Johnson, what made you return to the skies after everything that happened?" He paused, looking toward the horizon. "Because dignity doesn't beg for a seat," he said quietly. "It builds its own plane." The engines roared to life, deep and steady, echoing like a promise. As the jet ascended into the dawn, sunlight caught the tail fin, and for a brief second it shimmered not with luxury but with grace. Down below, passengers waiting for other flights looked up through the terminal glass. None of them knew the full story, but all of them felt it. The shift, the balance, the quiet kind of justice that never needed applause. And somewhere above the clouds, Malik Johnson smiled, the man who taught the world that, sometimes, the calmest takeoff begins with a fall.